Good morning. We are going to get started. I don't think we have a moderator, so we're going to be self-moderating. We are from Atlohsa Family Healing Services, and we'll get started with a round of introductions. Our brother Ryan here is bringing around a smudge, so if you'd like to smudge and haven't yet, just give him a wave. All right. So, Minoke Jibb, Binoe Maganog, Jawanong and Nimki Kwe Indigenous, Nimki Beneshi and Dodem, Michifanish Kwe and Dao, Muskoki Misiping and Donji, Atlohsa and Danoki. So, my name is Andrea Jibb. My spirit name is Southern Thunder Woman, and I am Thunderberry Clan of the Red River Settlement in Manitoba. I work for Atlohsa Family Healing Services with these fine folks, and I will pass it over to you, Terri.
Good morning, Minoga Jibb, Kuinga Newal Noma, Nin Dashinzi Terri, Ninonji Yahi, Nalahi, Walkway Chipway, Walk Chimnasing, Walk Britain, Walk Ireland, Shuknuwiki on London, Lawa Tuman Wundak Takwak, Ninda Loki, Atlohsa, Giwe Tashkad, Nakpi, Wiigiwaaminaan, Bojo, Waseabin Indigenous, Mikanak Dindodem, Chimnasing Dindonji, Lene Lenape, and Anishinaabe Kwe and Dao. So my name is Terri. I am with Atlohsa Family Healing Services. I am mixed ancestry, so I introduced myself first in the Munsee Delaware language, and then secondly in Anishinaabe-Moan. I also have a mix of British and Irish, so a lot going on there. I am currently the manager of homelessness services with Atlohsa, and it's really good to see all of you here today, so miigwech. And I will pass it over to Ryan.
Bonjour, Ani. Majikan, Nini Nabet, Dishnakaz, Amjanong Donjaba, Majikan Dodum, Chippewa, Potawatomi, Anishinaabe, Nini, and Dao. My name is Turtle Man Looking Around. I'm from Amjanong First Nation in Sarnia, Ontario. I am Turtle Clan. I'm the Cultural Support Coordinator for the Giiwaaminaan program at Atlohsa, and I'm just very honored and happy to be here today with you all.
All right, miigwech for that. So before we get started with our presentation, we're going to do things a little bit differently. So we're just going to, if it was a smaller room, we'd all be sitting in a circle. We don't have the ability to do that today, but we are just going to be like sharing stories with you today. So we're going to kind of be switching back and forth and bouncing off of each other and just really having an easy time just storytelling. But before we get into that, I wanted to say that it's really important to note that not all people who came to Turtle Island came here as settlers or migrants, and that we would like to acknowledge those that came particularly involuntarily through the transatlantic slave trade and through slavery, and that they have been here for hundreds of years and have deep connections to this land as well. We acknowledge them and we support them. So we have personal commitments to be in solidarity with the Black and the Afro-Indigenous community living in the diaspora, and we call on all of you to assist in the erasure of anti-Blackness in our schools, in our homes, in our workplaces, in our communities. So miigwech for that. All right.
Yeah. All right, so as we all mentioned, we work for an organization called Atlohsa Family Healing Services, which is located in London, Ontario. We're in very close proximity to 3 distinct First Nations, and we serve a fairly large urban Indigenous community with folks from all over Turtle Island. Our organization has existed for about 40 years now and started primarily as a violence against women organization in response to one of the first ever needs assessments of violence against Indigenous women. And so out of that, Atlohsa forms, and we operate to this day Jawanong shelter for Indigenous women and girls who are fleeing violence. And over the last 8 or so years, we have also greatly expanded our services for Indigenous people experiencing homelessness. So as you know, everyone is probably likely aware, there's a significant overrepresentation of Indigenous people experiencing homelessness in our community, as in many communities across Turtle Island. In London, it looks like about a 30% rate of Indigenous homelessness, with about 2%, where we're about 2% of the population. Those are the best numbers that we have, and we know that they're probably not fully accurate. But that's the best we have, and so we know that there's a lot of our relatives who are out there on the streets experiencing different forms of homelessness and housing instability. So Terri and I have operated various forms of shelter, Indigenous-led shelter in London since about 2019, and so we started with an overnight resting space in the back room of our head office with about 10 beds during a meth epidemic in 2019, and then in COVID, we moved towards a hotel response where we were supporting folks in hotel, and then we did a winter response at our current location in the winter of 2021, 2022. And that was a short 4-month response. So we've really experienced a form of institutional homelessness in a way where we've never had a solid location from which to operate our services, and we're the only Indigenous-led shelter in our community. And so if we're not operating, there are no Indigenous shelter beds. And we've seen the impact of what we're able to do in working from the basis of culture. And so we've really tried over the years to kind of piece together whatever we could. And so what we're going to be really focusing on today, and I know this is a session on leadership, and so we really want to give a little context of how we've been navigating some of the external and internal factors that have impacted our ability to deliver these types of services in our community. And a lot of our talk today will kind of center around our shelter, or I guess it's called a hub now. That's the new language that is being kind of utilized in London. Which we call Wiigiwaaminaan, which translates to the lodge that we collectively take care of. And Wiigiwaaminaan, as I shared, had been started in 2021, and we've kind of had a bit of a bumpy road, and our most recent iteration is in following from a whole of community response. And so maybe I'll pass it to you, Terri, to take it from here.
So back in 2022, so about 2 years ago, in the City of London, there was a grassroots effort to kind of respond to the amount of deaths that were happening in the community. So we were having a lot of poisonings, accidental poisonings from the opiate crisis happening in our community. And there was a grassroots organization that kind of banded together, and they started a protest to bring more support to the city for those folks who were at risk of accidental poisonings. And so out of that grew a whole of community response. So the entire City of London came together, all the different service providers, different community members, even the business association, basically the whole of community, as they were dubbing it, came together to try to navigate this response to make sure that people's lives were being saved. And I guess for us is when we talk about leadership, as Andrea said, we were talking about internal and external factors that that relate to leadership within our agency. When we look at the whole of community response, the Indigenous community actually wasn't a part of that whole community response. It was we were included after the fact. So they created all of these terms of references and all these tables, and then they came to the Indigenous community and basically said so how do you fit into this? And that wasn't the way that we felt was inclusionary. It wasn't the proper way to do things. And given that we have such a high number of Indigenous folks in the city, it was really disheartening to us. So we actually didn't feel like we were the whole of community. And so Andrea had also talked about the kind of destabilization that we've had over the last couple of years with our different responses, the different iterations of our responses. And we needed some sort of stability. And so as the city is coming together to try to find more supports with essentially trying to save people's lives, we were, feeling the effects of destabilization, not only externally with being discluded from these larger conversations, but we're also dealing with some internal struggles within our own organization of how it means to operate services from the lens of culture. And so you can see here on the slide, it says Indigenous-led services for Indigenous peoples, and that means sovereignty, autonomy, and community. Those three things are what we need in order to enact our services the way that our people need support. And we were seeing that like slowly being taken away from us. And then as we were struggling with some sort of internal dynamics, meaning that, we can be Indigenous-led around the board, but there's a difference between being Indigenous-led from the basis of culture and being led from the basis of like corporate style work. And so we were coming up to like these avenues of destabilization and threat of loss of integrity on how to do our work from the basis of culture, because that's how we've always done our work. And as Indigenous people, we know how to take care of each other. We have known how to take care of each other for thousands of years. And so we need to have the autonomy and the final say on how we look after each other through those Indigenous ways of knowing and being. Do you want to add anything to that?
Skip to the
Yeah,
next slide.
okay. And so we really came upon really looking and reflecting back on, these dynamics that were threatening the integrity of our programs when there was the threat of not being able to operate our services from the basis of culture. We really had to go back to the drawing board and look at like traditional governance and what that means. And so in this slide, you can see like there's some pillars here, and we call them kind of pillars because these are the things that we need to operate our services for folks experiencing forms of homelessness. So like land, access to land, fire, traditional foods, medicines, language, song, and storytelling. And so these like 7 pillars are like really something that we weren't able, like not willing to compromise on. If we weren't able to have access to these things, there was no compromise. Like we needed these pillars in order to do our work effectively. Maybe I'll pass it on to you.
And as Terri mentioned, I think we really want to emphasize that sometimes it's the internal dynamics where we have to look at what does it mean to operate from the basis of culture. And Terri spoke really well to these things as those non-negotiables. And, we had gone through a couple leadership transitions. Like obviously we're a not-for-profit organization and we work within that structure, which is a colonial structure. And so late last year, our organization made the decision to not continue with having a traditional executive director or CEO, and we moved towards a form of leadership within our organization as a circle of directors. And so now we have in place 5 directors where we're doing things by consensus and making decisions by consensus, and we're very new to it and still learning. But the idea is that ripple effect continues throughout the organization, whereas opposed to kind of like a top-down structure, that we're replicating these governance styles, which we know is kind of mirrored by our clan systems of how we make decisions, what roles and gifts people bring to the organization. And so we were trying to shift from who's the boss to what are your gifts, right? And acknowledging that each and every staff member is a leader in their role and has that ability to bring their gifts to their role, whether that's frontline or a manager or a board member even. And so we really made that shift towards trying to do things a little bit differently, right? With operating within a colonial framework of the Not-for-Profit Act, but how can we operate within this framework a little bit differently? And so perhaps I'll go over to you here, Ryan. And so with some of these changes in operating from the basis of culture, we really had to ask ourselves these questions of what does it mean? How do we do that? How do we support our staff to operate in these ways? And also with our funder, as we have a really good relationship with our funder, who's the City of London. And oftentimes, and I'm sure most of you experience this, is that funders want to see direct frontline service delivery. And so we often have had to advocate for the type of services that we want to do that maybe aren't direct frontline, but are as equally important to being able to operate our services from the basis of culture. So I'll go over to you, Ryan, to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so this place that we're speaking about, it's a shelter within a city. But the main thing that we want to do here, in this photo here, this is our sweat lodge, and that teepee that you see right there, that's what houses our sacred fire that's lit every single day. So when our young men and women come here, we were able to start sharing those teachings about our roles and responsibilities. And like my sisters spoke about the clan system, we're able to start sharing those teachings with them. And we get to talk about the different clans. This clan has this gift, the Turtle Clan. You know, those are the moderators. Those are the ones that try and go stay in between. We have our leadership clans. We have those crane, those eagles, those leaders, right? The bear clan, the ones that hold and carry those medicines in the ceremony. So we get to share this with them, and not just with them, with our staff. Recently, we had a naming ceremony where 4 of our staff received their name. And that's important because that is the foundation of our identity. That identity that we need and that we believe is what helps alleviate and overcome homelessness within our Indigenous community. And when they get that name, and that's what I tell them, I was like, this is that first strong step. I was like, you're finding out who you are. And I see the difference in them when they get their names, when they sit at that drum, when they're the ones who walk around with that medicine to share with you. It's like you see them, you see that fire start in them. I was like, not just our relatives that are experiencing homelessness, but in our staff. And that's what we tell them, is like we meet them where they're at. But as a leader, we have to do it too with our staff. I have to meet them where they're at. And as we share these ceremonies and these teachings and these things, and we're also trying to help them find out who they are. And it's the trickle-down effect, is that we have this strong staff, this staff that are getting strong. I'm thinking about them right now. My young warriors back at Wiigiwaaminaan, and that are looking after them right now. I have a beautiful staff there, and they consist of these young people that are trying to find their way. And it's beautiful because they're strong. They have gifts. Everything that we do, it's like, I don't want to look outside because you all have gifts in here. And they get to share those. They get to share those with our residents at Wiigiwaaminaan. And it's beautiful because they're making these stories. They're making these connections. And our residents go to them and they're like, I can talk to you. I can do this. They're mentors. That's where that leadership comes in. No matter what clan you are, there's always a leader in that clan. And we all use those teachings to lead our homes, our families, our communities. And we pass that on and we make that important and at the forefront of giving that knowledge and that empowering our people in that way. That way they're able to, they see that and they feel good and they're like, okay, well, I want my house. I want to get my own house. I want to be in there to control that, right? I want to do those steps and do those things. It's the long game, but it's a beautiful journey. This is the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life. To work with our participants, to work with our staff and watching them grow. And I tell them that all the time. I'm like, this is who we are. We pass these on. This isn't for me to keep. This is for you. One day I won't be here. One day they won't be there. One day you will be here where I am. This is who we are. We pass this on. And when they see that in that sweat lodge, coordinators, CCWs, outreach workers, directors sit in that lodge. And we're on the same level, and we're all the same. And this is where we do that transparency. This is where we form that trust. These are the ways of our people in those ceremonies. This is how we do that. We're all one. Every voice is heard. Everyone is seen. And this is how my sisters, their vision to do this is to have that circle. We're all there together. This Wiigiwaaminaan, when people come, we're like, welcome to Wiigiwaaminaan First Nation. This is their home. This is their community. This is where they feel safe. And I think about my sisters and their vision and how they built this Giwatashka. They built this. And I honor that. And I look back further because they shared with me the vision that came from those Nokomis, those ones that sat here and they did that vision. And they said, this is harm reduction. This is what we do. We don't turn our relatives away. We don't throw them away. I reflect back on those a lot. And I tell the teams that I lead that this is what we do. We don't turn anyone away. for those old ones to share that, this is our vision, that this is that sema, this is that prayer. And they made it vocal because normally we don't tell what our prayer is, but they did. And this is how I honor that sema. This is how we honor that vision, is to make sure that we empower our people, that every level we have strong Anishinaabe, Nini, and Kwewag. That's all in a nutshell. One last teaching that I tell them, I was like, and it's that consistency. Our grandfather, our Mishomis Jesus that gets up every day, that son. And I tell them, I was like, ceremony is a celebration of life, but that life is a ceremony. When we see that sun get up and rise every day, that's consistency. This is how we should model ourselves. We're consistent. Just like when it goes down and our grandmother, our Nokomis, that Nokomis baboon comes up and she watches over us at night. Consistency. We take it for granted because it happens all the time. I was like, this is how we and who we need to be. Miigwech.
And I wish we had more time to really go into more stories, but Ryan, everything that Ryan just said is the whole reason why we need to operate from the lens of culture to support folks experiencing homelessness, Indigenous folks experiencing homelessness, in our case specifically. And thank you, Ryan, for summing that all up, because that is the exact reason there. So I guess that's coming up to the end of our time. So we do have about 10 minutes for questions. And Ryan has the mic. So if you have a question, maybe just put up your hand and he can come with the mic for you. The tech people have told me that any questions need to be into the mic so that it can be heard for the folks online.
Thank you. Beautiful work. I go see. My name's Osamasko. My question would be is that when you bring in new brothers and sisters that are going to do the good work with you, and they come from that colonial mindset and that BSW, PhD, DDD, HDD, all these things, what is it and how is it are you seeing to help them walk right back into ceremony and to walk from that way, opposed to letting themselves run all the other numbers and letters?
Well, I explained to them, I'm like,
You need the mic, Ryan.
we carry these, right? These medicine bags, and we put these medicines in here that help us. But I explained to them that, I was like, that's just a visual representation of you. I was like, you already bring a strong medicine here. You have that love. You bring those 7 grandfather teachings. I was like, and I told my non-Indigenous coworkers and them that, I was like, you don't have to feel less than because you already have that medicine in you. You bring that medicine of love, respect, humility. And I start drawing those parallels to that. I'm like, you don't have to feel like we're here, you're over there. We're all in here together. I was like, we're all represented. We are all creation. When we say all our relatives, we say, this means us. This means nature. This means all the elements, every direction. I was like, just because we're different colors doesn't mean that they're not less than. And and they do that work. And I tell them, you carry medicine already and you don't even know. So I hope that answered.
I would just like to add to that too. There has been a lot of challenges because oftentimes we operate in the gray. We don't operate from strict black and white rules. And oftentimes when people are coming from those types of backgrounds, they have a really hard time with operating in the gray. They don't understand it. And so it takes a lot of intentional work on our part with having access to ceremony to learn that I can't tell you how long a sweat lodge is going to be. There is no agenda. Just come, just be, So it's a lot of experience, and it can take quite a long time for some of our staff coming in who are non-Indigenous or just reconnecting back to the culture to understand how to operate from just here and to slow things down and just operate in the gray area. But it can be challenging at times for sure. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then we will let the next team start to get ready. And I don't know if my brother and sister up here want to say any other words, but miigwech to all of you for listening and for being here today. It was really an honor to share this this little short story with y'all today. I wish we had more time, but there's a pamphlet here on the screen, and that is just giving some more information about Wiigiwaaminaan and the services that we have there. And of course, you can find more information online. Sorry, I can't get the cursor to work to close this. Someone's coming up to scene. Okay. I can't see the cursor to close that off.
Don't worry about it. It's all good.
That was fantastic. Sure. That was working each other nice.
Is this you guys? IH6.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Firstly, thanks to our first presenters. That was not intimidating at all to follow. Thank you. I'm here today, and thank you so much for having Victoria and I. We have a conversation as well about leadership in a different kind that can hopefully work together with really amazing grassroots projects like that.
Yeah, just to introduce myself, Sego Sewagwego, Victoria Bomberry ni Yungets, Ganyak Gahagani Wakunjoda, Waxkalewagani Wigitaroda, and the Six Nations Nidawagana. Negiga Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership, Jinue Wagyote. So my name is Victoria Bomberry. I'm a Mohawk Bear from Six Nations of the Grand River, and I work with the Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, and my name is Shannon Hansberger. I am a manager at the City of Hamilton in homeless and policy and programs, and work closely with Victoria on all things homelessness. Happy to be here.
Yeah, before we move on to the next slide, we also just want to give a huge thanks to our community, the Indigenous peoples that have contributed to the work that we do, have specifically contributed to the Action Research on Chronic Homelessness project that we're going to speak to, but also our system partners who we are here on behalf of, and the incredible collaboration that they're always a part of in our work. Just to briefly outline our presentation today, we really want to start with what guides our work and our partnership and collaboration between the Indigenous Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership and the City of Hamilton when we're addressing homelessness. It's really important to ground our conversation and our presentation in the roots of Indigenous homelessness, not only because it's part of what we need to know to address homelessness, but it's also important as a system partner to take on some of that labor of noticing and knowing what the roots of Indigenous homelessness are and why it's integral to approach Indigenous homelessness differently. After that, we're going to speak about who we are, our two organizations, how we came to be here in front of you and present and share our collaboration and our relationship, what it means to nurture a relationship between two community entities in addressing homelessness, a demonstration of our relationship through the Action Research on Chronic Homelessness partnership and the way that we're innovating system change, and how that has led to system change and system impact in our community.
So firstly, this is a really important slide. If this is the only one you take away, this would be it. Homelessness is, or Indigenous homelessness is a colonial legacy, and that's how we live and do our work in Hamilton. The City of Hamilton is situated on the traditional territories of the Erie Neutral Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. The land's covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg to share and care for those resources around the Great Lakes. It's also covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase from 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, it's a meeting place and home to many Indigenous people across Turtle Island. And we have a responsibility to see them as parts of our community and as visitors as well, on my behalf. We do know, as in many communities, that Indigenous people are overrepresented in our homelessness population. At the point in time, federal presentation yesterday, IH6 reported about 34% of Canada-wide homelessness was in the Indigenous community, the second largest group after non-Indigenous or non-racialized individuals. So that overrepresentation is a reminder for all of us that colonization was a violent disruption of the way of life. And by interrupting the family unit, by interrupting culture, by interrupting this generation across generation across generation, we do create impacts and consequences of that. And for us, we consider homelessness the consequence of that colonization. And so when we do our work as the service manager, we have a responsibility to all the individuals experiencing homelessness in our community, but we also know that what we're doing is an act of reconciliation by taking this in a very intentional way.
Who we are. I'm here on behalf of the Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership. We are an Indigenous-led nonprofit organization, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with. We have a very small staff base. We have 4 full-time staff, 3 of which focus on reaching home, and 1 project staff that leads the Action Research on Chronic Homelessness project for Hamilton, as well as 1 student that works with us. We draw from our traditional understandings and knowledges. Our staff complement at this point is Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe. We draw from our traditional teachings, Gatniguhlio, Gatnikuyo, and the 7 grandfathers teachings to guide us in our work. And that's what we take into our conversations with the city and other partners when we're thinking about the needs of our community. We, Chill manages, stewards a budget of about $5 million each year, which for a nonprofit organization is quite large, but as you'll see with our system partners, is quite small when we're thinking about addressing homelessness in a city of 500,000 people. Shannon?
Yeah, so I am the manager at the City of Hamilton responsible for reaching home, but I have a number of other colleagues who I work closely with. We are the designated entity. We have a staff, I think we've updated our numbers based off of some recent council reports, and our staff is now at about 95 individuals across 7 teams. 2 years ago, that was 70 people. For everyone who realizes how big homelessness is an issue, we have the privilege of expanding and bringing people on staff. Collectively, we manage the development, delivery, and evaluation of housing and homelessness programs, and we act as the service manager for provincial and federal funding. And we work to advocate for a healthy housing continuum for today and the future of our city. We do have the benefit of having dedicated teams for contract management, for finance, for HR, for comms, for our front desk, for our central wait system, for all of these things. And so when we talk about access to resources, there is a huge disparity here. I work specifically on policy development and program design, so I like to call myself the R&D of housing, which sounds way better than it is, but I enjoy it, so that's good.
I liaison with different staff members and team members over at the city. So when we're talking about a community entity to community entity relationship, we really need a joint leadership and a shared vision and responsibility as to how we're going to address homelessness in Hamilton. This next slide speaks to some of the initiatives that led us to our partnership. On the right, you'll see some critical numbers that guide our conversations.
Yeah, so the top scary number there is the number of people who experience homelessness at least one night in our area. If you're familiar with by name data, we have about a 1,600 by name list at every given time across the year, kind of oscillates between 1,500 and 1,700 depending on the month. Right now, we are seeing an increase in that number, a proliferation of encampments. The last time I checked, we had over 300 encampments in our city, 300 individuals, in those encampments across 100 different sites. In our lower city, if anyone's familiar with Hamilton, we have like a lower city by the lake, and then we have kind of what we call a mountain, is not a mountain. About half of those people are in that lower city, clustered around different support services, shelters, and that type of thing. And then that second half are kind of dispersed across the more rural regions of the area.
The second number we have on the screen is 23%. During the last point in time count held in Hamilton, 23% of respondents to the survey identified as Indigenous or having Indigenous ancestry, compared to just over 2% of the overall population in Hamilton that identify Indigenous. So like many of your communities, Indigenous peoples are overrepresented in experiencing homelessness in Hamilton. And we chose this number, 23%, from the point in time count because this was an Indigenous-led initiative. And what we have found and what we've heard across many conversations is Indigenous peoples, for many different reasons, do not access mainstream services or do not self-identify in mainstream services, leading to lower estimates in terms of the data we're receiving from our homeless shelter, from national counts in terms of Indigenous peoples experiencing homelessness. And so this number is Indigenous-led, community data-driven data that we've gathered. In 2015, Hamilton, many of you know, are the executive director of the Coalition of Hamilton Indigenous Leadership, Cindy Sue Montana McCormack, led the first Indigenous enumeration in Hamilton, which revealed again that Indigenous peoples in Hamilton were disproportionately experiencing homelessness in Hamilton. It was the first Indigenous-led homeless enumeration for our community, and it led to further conversations with our City of Hamilton partners. And if we know that, and we know from our conversations with community, we know from this data that our community has gathered for itself, that Indigenous peoples are disproportionately experiencing homelessness in Hamilton. But at that time, we were receiving less than $500,000 through the homelessness strategy at that time, a homelessness partnering strategy. How can we accurately respond to Indigenous homelessness with such a low budget? And so through various conversations with our city partners, we were able to develop the 20% rule, which Shannon will speak to. But the 2015 Indigenous-led enumeration in Hamilton led to a partnership in 2016 where the city and the Indigenous community co-led the point-in-time count for Hamilton, and again revealed that a disproportionate number of Indigenous peoples were experiencing homelessness in Hamilton, and that we need a joint way to address homelessness in our community.
Yeah, before I talk about the third number, I'll just add to that to say that the journey to having this strong relationship was unfortunately required that data. The political leadership in Hamilton responds very strongly to data. And so when we had the Indigenous community participate and collect data they felt comfortable with and interpret the data with their knowledge, that was a really big bridge to get to what I'm about to talk to. So I'll go there. That last number, $186 million, is the 2024 housing and homelessness budget between municipal, federal, and provincial partners. 90 million of that is directly to homelessness, and the rest is going into housing and social assistance, things like that. Approximately 10% of the 186 and the 90 million is federally funded, and 20% from the province. Maybe 5 years ago, that would have been a different proportion, but Hamilton is now funding 70% of this budget for municipal coffers. It is unsustainable. We are doing our best. It is scary. Within that, though, however, I think it was in 2004, so we maybe were in our 20th year of this, 20% of that federal funding is allocated to Indigenous homelessness projects. And not only is that allocated separately, but it's also allocated by CHIL. So they decide what sub-projects get funded in what amounts. It's not our money, it's not our people, but it should be funded in a direct correlation with the number and proportion of Indigenous individuals in that population. So we have had that 20% rule for 20 years, and we are doing our best at the city to kind of advocate for expanding that. So does that need to go higher? Does that need to be in different funding streams? Does that need to go in different places? And that's kind of where we are right now. We also, in this process, kind of respect the knowledge brought forward by the Indigenous community. And so we decolonize information sharing as much as possible. We ask for guidance and we do all those things. But from a real financial perspective, we have set rules.
And so what this all speaks to is that the way that we approach the community entity to entity partnership in Hamilton is through a shared responsibility to our community in the way that we address homelessness. We have a shared vision that we approach through many conversations, not only at the leadership level, at different population and systems level, and certainly with our community as well. What this looks like in our day-to-day conversations is, in our day-to-day, is having open and honest conversations as leaders as to what's happening in our community, what our needs are, what our challenges and what our successes are. It's going to our systems leaders as well and talking about what their agencies are facing, what their needs are, what their successes and their challenges are. And it's also speaking with our frontline workers as well, meeting with them regularly to see what they're seeing in our community when they're supporting our community members. If you recall from our presentation at CAH 2023, we titled that conversation, "If we prioritize Indigenous homelessness, we won't have enough for anybody else." And that's representing the kind of open and honestness that we have in our conversations, being able to be critical with each other and saying, I don't know how this is going to work. I like this idea, but I don't know how it's going to work. And we work together to try it. And sometimes we take risks and sometimes we make mistakes, but we're open and honest with each other that we have successes, but we still have a big challenge in addressing homelessness in Hamilton. And we need to continually innovate and be responsible and accountable to each other in the ways that we do that.
And I think at the base of that is a shared respect for each other to say, we both want this to work. We both want this to succeed. We both want solutions. We may have different skills and different resources available to us. We have different perspectives on how to get there, but we have a scary thing in front of us and we're in it together. And so I think that, to me, is true partnership. And I'll speak to the last line there, ongoing commitment. A partnership does not stay a partnership without effort. We have to be dedicated to each other. We have to talk about what's working for us, what's not working for us, and follow through. So our relationship continues based on respect. The municipality uses their position as a service manager at the advice of our partners in a lot of ways. And we do that to influence change across our system as well as within the city. So there is acts of decolonization, there is acts of information sharing, there is acts of me talking with my colleagues and saying, I don't think you're going about this the right way. And being honest with them to say, I think I might have information you don't have, and I'm happy to share it with you so that you will know what I know, and we do this better. For example, one way that works, if we go back to point in time, is that we can't speak for the Indigenous community. And so we need to do this with them. It means really listening and creating pathways for feedback that are adhered to and respected. And so for this, we have an Indigenous magnet event for the collection of point-in-time data that Chill plans. And the data that they collect is submitted because we have a responsibility as a service manager to collect the data and submit that data. But what I don't have is the knowledge to interpret that data. And so we have an MOU with Chill to say, you're going to collect the data. These are the requirements under Reaching Home, but you tell me how you want me to say it. So when I report back to my council, or I talk back to the public, or I talk to the federal provincial government, I'm passing on the information you want and the way you think it should be done, not in the way of the municipality.
So these ongoing commitments, we're going to speak to some of the practical examples later in our presentation, but these are embedded in different policies and practices in the work that we do. And as Shannon mentioned, the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding we have about Indigenous data from the Indigenous Magnet event has been helpful in developing longer-term, bigger solutions for our community and for our homelessness system in Hamilton. As I mentioned earlier, part of the responsibility as an ally and a partner in this work is taking on the labor of noticing. When Reaching Home came into practice and the city was mandated to collect data, the city team had already had conversations about how collection of data would impact the Indigenous community. And instead of us taking on the labor of demonstrating to them and arguing as to why they don't have the skills, the capacity to gather our stories, to interpret our stories, or to share our stories, they came to us and said, we have concerns about this mandate and how we're going to gather and share Indigenous homelessness data. Let's work together on a solution. One of those solutions was building on our Memorandum of Understanding to develop an action research on chronic homelessness proposal, to develop an Indigenous data stewardship and governance strategy for HIFIS data in Hamilton. There's two pillars to our action research on chronic homelessness and the ways that we're innovating system change in Hamilton: the Indigenous cultural capacity and accountability, which is developing an Indigenous, we call it Yohahio, In Western terms, it's a common assessment tool. It's a way to understand the strengths of Indigenous peoples that are experiencing homelessness and the housing needs and supports that they have. We're also developing an Indigenous cultural training for the homelessness system. It's going to be piloted with our non-Indigenous partners first and foremost. And what it's basically building is a training framework so that every person working in our system has a basic understanding about the unique causes and experiences of Indigenous homelessness, not only in Hamilton, but specifically in Hamilton, but broadly some of the system colonial influences that has led to the overrepresentation of Indigenous peoples experiencing homelessness, but the specific reasons about homelessness in Hamilton Indigenous experiences. We are building out a framework that trains frontline workers and volunteers, training that addresses the knowledge of managers and system leaders, so that we're building on this training, that they have basic knowledge, everybody's got that. Okay, let's move on to intermediate knowledge, everybody's got that, and let's build on to advanced knowledge, so that our system is as safe and responsive to Indigenous homelessness as we can possibly make it. The second aspect of our Action Research on Chronic Homelessness initiative is the Indigenous data governance and stewardship. We're building out a strategy to guide the way that Indigenous data is gathered through the Yohahio Common Assessment Tool for Indigenous Peoples, as well as the way that we're using, analyzing, and accessing Indigenous homelessness data in Hamilton. Ultimately, as bolded on our slide here, our goal is that Indigenous peoples are housed in Hamilton because our system is more responsive to their needs, and there's cultural safety and data to support and inform our system investments in the future.
Also, adding on that, I'd just like to say that the way that this research is being done is by and for the Indigenous community. We had a lovely third presenter with us, Laurie Froman. She's unfortunately not able to be with us, but she has been leading cultural discussions in our community with an elder with her in many cases, to have those discussions of what's working, what's not working, how do we build this framework so that this place is more safe for this community. So I'd like to say even just down to the way this work is being done is really important.
Thanks, Shannon. This is one of the images that Laurie has worked with a local Indigenous artist to visualize the Action Research on Chronic Homelessness initiative in Hamilton, depicting the ways that our community is walking into worlds, attempting to stay connected and maintain their cultural relationships and identities, the ways that we're walking in the urban environment and asserting our identities and ensuring that our rights are met. And in the middle, down the waterfall there, is the two-row wampum, which for our community, the Haudenosaunees, signifies the ways that we respect each other and the way that we work together, that we each have responsibilities, we each have our own lane in a sense, and that we're not to interrupt each other, but we do support each other on our journeys. And I do want to emphasize the Action Research Chronic Homelessness Project has been very much a community-led initiative. Laurie has hosted over 90 Indigenous community conversations talking about how our system responds to Indigenous homelessness with Indigenous community members with lived experience, local Indigenous knowledge keepers and elders, with Indigenous frontline workers, with Indigenous leaders, to first and foremost ground the Action Research on Chronic Homelessness in our community's experiences and knowledges. She's also spoken with non-Indigenous system leaders to speak about the ways that they're working to address Indigenous homelessness through their agencies as well. This is where we're going to share some of the practical ways that we're innovating system change in Hamilton and that we hope to inspire you as well to.
Yeah, so really this is kind of the output of what we hope our partnership can accomplish, and we've seen successes. We are inspired always to see more, but these are kind of the avenues that we tread down to try and make that system change. The first one there is policy. I think we've had some great examples of kind of grassroots work, but in this case, there is an opportunity as the service manager to take a top-down system influential role where I can set policy to say, you are required to take this training. In our contracts right now, we do have the requirement that staff be trained in cultural competency training, but we don't control that curriculum. So now we can say, we have a curriculum that has been built by our local community that we are going to make available to you, and it's required that you take it to be a service provider in our community. So we have that opportunity to take a top-down approach where we can I'm looking at my notes here, and they're all a little bit too small to read despite my glasses. So I'll say there's that top-down approach, but there's also things I do on a smaller scale. For example, whenever we have a new team member join my team, we set up an introduction meeting with Jill so that we can explain this relationship, so that when we have changes of hands, of changes of minds, bringing people into the tent, it's my responsibility to make sure they understand the relationship and the expectations of them as a representative of the city in that partnership. So that is something I take on. We have monthly sector check-in meetings. There is an Indigenous updates on the agenda every meeting. There is a slide that says Indigenous homelessness is a colonial legacy every meeting. We have our executive level quarterly meetings where we have Indigenous updates every meeting. So where do I embed this at a system level and a policy level to say the city champions this, please get on board?
Indigenous leadership is a priority in every conversation. And through practices between our leadership teams, but also through our system, we have an incredible system in Hamilton that are taking on the initiative themselves. Even before we've built the Action Research on Chronic Homelessness Cultural Capacity and Training Framework, they've been taking the initiative to look for cultural training locally to ensure that their staff are better informed about the needs and experiences of homelessness for Indigenous peoples. We're gathering those best practices to put forward a summary of how individual agencies can enhance their responsiveness to Indigenous homelessness. Some of those practices we've heard across conversations this week: hiring Indigenous staff, ensuring that your staff are trained in Indigenous cultural knowledges and histories in your area, having an established partnership with local Indigenous agencies so that the non-Indigenous agency is aware of community gatherings and events, having transportation available for Indigenous clients so they don't have to struggle to get to those community events, and ensuring that you're facilitating their relationships with community. Finally, some of our pieces about accountability. This work is not easy. As Shannon mentioned, we have many conversations across many tables, and that is a part of our role as leaders, is ensuring that we're continually checking in with our community, continually checking in with our system partners, and continually checking in with each other as to how our relationship is going, what are we missing, what more can we do at each of these levels.
I'm going to jump in one more time. This wasn't in our notes either. I'm just riffing. When it comes to accountability, I think it also really is wonderful to have a strong partner who you get along with, which is not always the case, we know. But Victoria is amazing. And I know that if I wasn't doing my side of the work, Victoria would tell me. Victoria would hold me accountable. And that... I know many in this community have had to speak truth to power, and I hope to be a soft place for hard conversations, and likewise to say, hey, we need something from you, and have that conversation. And I thought this is what we were doing, and I thought we were doing, and I haven't seen it yet, so can we talk? We do have monthly meetings just to have those discussions among ourselves, and hold each other accountable to preserve this relationship.
Yep, thank you, oops, did I turn it off?
Something happened, but that was the end anyway.
Sorry. I did.
We've missed our contact info. It's on our last slide there. Don't know what happened. We can circulate it. But we do have some time for some questions. We want to preserve some time for the third presentation as well, but happy to liberate this mic for anyone who wants to ask anything. Got to be on the mic for the video. I'm so sorry.
I have a specific question for resources in and around Hamilton. I know you guys specifically deal with the homelessness in Hamilton, but do you have resources for addictions and mental health within Hamilton for Indigenous peoples?
Yeah, we do. I'm sure many of you have heard of the recent updates around the Heart Hub situation. And so we did have a safe consumption site, and we are transitioning to a Heart Hub, and we are working with our Indigenous providers to provide support within that. But I'll actually leave Victoria to speak to one of the Indigenous sub-projects that provides some mental health and addictions mobile support as well.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. If you want to look back on the program for CH, yesterday, one of our Indigenous-led homelessness sub-projects led a presentation about what it looks like to address harm reduction in Hamilton. It was yesterday at 3:30. And so they have a van that they take out to the encampments. And we've been really fortunate through the consistent funding of Reaching Home that we've been able to fund this sub-project for a number of years. And so the staff have been able to build up relationships with Indigenous peoples living in encampments. And as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, having consistent staff in these sub-projects, especially when you're working with such a vulnerable group that has experienced significant trauma from institutions, having consistent staff who demonstrate that they are committed to addressing their needs has been critical to building up relationships and opening up the trust between Indigenous peoples experiencing homelessness and living in encampments and accessing services. The Indigenous homelessness mobile van is often the first point of contact, and they're able to build up that trust so Indigenous community members feel more comfortable accessing other services as well. I also want to point out, that kind of leads me to a question. I don't know if we hit it as strongly, but the 20% rule is not only for Reaching Home funding, but it's a global budget that the city has committed through their provincial funding and other funding sources as well, recognizing that addressing homelessness requires using all of our resources, including the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit and other housing supports as well.
Thank you. Just a quick question about when you guys are having to work together in office and there's strategies of other counselors and positions trying to pitch you against each other to outcome policy or drastic change that you're trying to see. What are some tips and tricks that you could give us to ensure you divert away from those or still outcome what you're trying to do?
Oh, giving me an easy one on the last session of the conference. Thanks. I think there's always a politicization of work. I think all of us would agree that if we could do work without kind of the intervention of public meetings and constituents and stuff, that perhaps we'd be a little bit more free and clear to say what we want to say and do what we want to do. However, that's my role in this partnership, is to ensure that we can navigate that political system as easily as possible. So we draft and provide a lot of administrative support when it comes to strategizing around council reports. We use our management teams to have meetings with councillors, to provide information in advance, to collect questions that come up so that maybe we can answer them before that comes before the council floor. Even if we can't, they will let us know, hey, I asked you my question, maybe I didn't like your answer, just so you know I'm going to ask it again for the public record. Or you asked me a question, you answered it really well, and I want it on the public record. So having those relationships with our counselors allows us to have at least notice of what's going to happen. And I think if we were to come forward with some Indigenous specific policy, we would do that together. We do have an Indigenous Relations Division at the city, and we would work with them as well. But oftentimes, we don't ask permission. We just put it in the report. So we don't go back to council and tell them, hey, we want to keep doing this 20% thing. We just keep doing it. I think we will pass the mic on to the third presenters. Thanks everyone for your attention. We will be around if you have questions after.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much to the conference for inviting us to speak today, all the way from Manitoba, which was warmer the first 2 days that we got here than it was here. Thank you. So we are from Wiigiwaaminaan, a small Indigenous-led nonprofit organization located in the heart of the north end of Winnipeg, Manitoba. For any of you that are here from Manitoba, you can come find us behind the Northern or the Yale Hotel. My name is Kathy Cook, and I come from Penamutang First Nation, Treaty 2, but I did marry my warrior who came from Treaty 5, Bloodvein First Nation. It's a bit of a joke. If anyone knows Bloodvein, please don't tell anyone I married one. But most of my work has been done on Treaty 1 and across all of Manitoba. So really grateful to be here. In this capacity, I've spent most of my work life working. I started in nonprofit a long, long time ago, and I moved over to government. So I was one of the folks that was looking at where this funding was going to go. So being on this side of it has really, really opened my eyes and humbled me to the amount of work that goes into anybody that's working within one of these organizations based on the funding that we get. So Wabang Abanusiaj, I'm going to put my glasses on. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna let my folks introduce themselves. I'm going to introduce Patty, sitting there with the pink phone. She is our manager of operations. I'm the executive director. She just keeps us all in line. So I'm going to let Fedja come up and introduce himself, and Tyler as well. I've asked them to come up with me because one of the larger parts of our program is men's healing, men's health. So take it off. Tell us who you are.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Fedja. I'm a manager of housing at Wabang Abanusiaj. I've been there for 7+ years at this point, and we deal basically with everything housing related, from dealing with slumlords to helping people navigate the system to trying to give people voice the best possible way we can, aligning them with services that are needed to have better chance at life and succeeding. Also law enforcement, jails, food banks, furniture stops, you name it, anything that we can do to give people a chance to get a fair chance at housing, which is easier said than done these days, and provide stability to the core area in our city, which is, unfortunately, seems like it's getting worse by ongoing day. Mr. Tyler, come say hi.
Good morning. My name's Tyler. I started at Wabang as a volunteer in 2017. I used to be the firekeeper whenever they had full moon ceremonies or anything like that. Fast forward 2021, I started there as a building maintenance. They seen my potential with the community, and from there I went to a housing support worker. And from housing support worker, I went to men's coordinator. And from there, I'm a men's manager now. I get great pride helping men who just reach out. Being a guide, period, to reach out for help is a hard thing to do, and I love the work I do. I love Wabang.
All right. So Wabang Abanusiaj is an Indigenous nonprofit organization that provides opportunities for healing for families to live free of violence. We were originally established in 1994 as a result of the increased violence against women in our province. So with that, we have really evolved into a much larger center. Our focus is still on women and children, making sure that they have safe places to stay, making sure that they have supports within our organization. But one of the other pieces, and I think we're going to spend a little bit of time on it because it really speaks to leadership and community, and Ty is, the poster child for that, essentially. So based on him, we've created a program that will actually work to lift up all our men. Again, so with our service provision, we do have we have 2 3-bedroom suites for women and children that are escaping violence at immediate need. We also have 1 emergency shelter for men, hotel. We have just recently, thanks to all the hard work of these gentlemen here, we have just recently got 2 3-bed units, so another 6 units for men. Very unique in that we truly, thank you. And in addition, we truly believe that the men in our community also need to act as warriors for our center. We have women and children there that have been victimized, that are, surviving as best they can. So the men that these guys are able to work with and coordinate time and space with, part of the beauty in that is we talk about leadership and collaboration. It is essentially, particularly programs they have designed. And I want to speak to one in particular. I could have pages and pages of notes. I could tell you what we do, but some of the more key ones are some new initiatives that we've done. So again, recognizing that the strength and the knowledge of our community comes from outside of our building. So having to shift our own mindset and our lens to have all of the staff and all of the community understand that we are there. We have the privilege of being there every day. We get paid to do this, all of our staff. However, for our community, we want them to understand that this place is theirs. We would not be there if it wasn't for them coming up to our doors. I needed to just speak a little bit, I hate bringing it up, a little bit about COVID and what COVID did to so many of our unsheltered persons, to so many of our community members. I've been with Wabang now for just about a year, so I missed COVID on the community level. But when I got back there, everything was just reopening. And there was a lot of difficulty in figuring out how were we going to open our doors back up and what was that going to look like. So it was a slow process. But again, with the help of our men and our men supporting men, we had all of our volunteers that wanted to be in our space. So we've got them living in spaces and places, but every day they would show up to support and to help and to work. So we kind of looked outside of the box. I'll note we have 16 funders, less than $2 million a year. So we really need to work hard for what we get. So our volunteer initiative was something that we piloted that didn't come with any funding, but we wanted the men to be able to come in and do some work because there is intrinsic value in keeping busy. So these two wonderful men went and gathered up their men. And so now we have men volunteering twice a week for 2 hours. We have an honorarium system. So if they come in and work for half a day, it's $50. If they come in and work for a full day, it's $100. But we went a little bit further because, again, we can't forget about our children and youth. We went and we looked at different organizations within our geographical area. A lot of work with Elizabeth Fry, with corrections. So we partnered with Native Women's Transition Center, which is a home for women that are coming out of corrections. And so that partnership has also allowed us, they've given us 2 volunteers twice a week, and these women are coming there, they're feeding the community, they're cooking, making the bannock, and doing this wonderful outreach that we're continuously trying to maintain to ensure that each and every one within our community knows where we are and knows what we have to provide. So again, our focus really was on intimate partner violence, domestic violence, family violence. And again, looking at ways to support the healing in that, but also finding safe spaces for women and children, identifying that men too can be impacted, having to look for spaces that we would be able to maintain them and have the ability to support through programming. I do have to say I love our men's program. We have 2, like I said, 3-bed units, and we have 6 they call them random men. So it's having these men come together to learn how to support. And the beauty in it is that they have to learn how to live together. Ty's the enforcer, so when there's trouble, he just walks over there. Fedja tries to weigh it out, but it's really neat to see the connection for our men and just the supports that they're given. And it's amazing to see these men come into our building twice a week, pretty much every day, even if they're not volunteering, handing out snack bags, making sure everybody shows up on hamper day. It's all hands on deck. And so when we talk about building capacity in the community, that speaks to having our volunteers come in with the lived experience who actually live on the same bench as the men and women that are coming to get their snack bags, to get their food. So the beauty in having our volunteers know the names of all 50 people in our yards. It's mind-blowing and it's humbling to me that they're able to do all of this work with such a good smile on their face. Do you know that our volunteers who are living under bridges, on benches, they smile more than I do? I still can't figure it out. They've always got a smile. They've always got a really easy way of making you feel like you're not helping them, right? They want to be helpful. And so they come in and they do all of this work for each and every one of not just the community, but for the women, for the children. I do like to note we have 80% Indigenous staff, including our board, and we also have 60% with lived experience. As we talked about, you know, Ty coming in as a participant and moving. Oh, there it is. Right there. Sorry. Just that one down button. I'm not very technologically inclined. My office is full of sticky notes. So some of the services that we provide, and it is quite a robust calendar that we have. We try and make sure that something is going on every single day. So our services for women, children, and youth, we run traditional parenting, which anybody, I don't know if anyone's from Manitoba, our CFS system in Manitoba requires when a child is apprehended and being returned home, that the parent tick off a bunch of boxes. Traditional parenting is one of those boxes. The beauty in that we are able to do it is that we can do it from an Indigenous lens. So we can take a colonial piece of training and we can kind of meet the needs of everybody around us and just flip it to what we want. We do little ones and caregivers, which is an opportunity for mothers and children or fathers and their children to come in and just do some meaningful play. We have childminders on site every day to ensure that any adult that's visiting our center has the ability to leave their child in a safe space. The other thing we make sure is nobody ever leaves without a meal. It doesn't matter which program you're coming to, you will always feast. We have our junior youth program, so we have that Monday nights. So local children from our community will come. It's a 5-week session. We have senior youth program. They were carving pumpkins yesterday. Celebrating tradition through culture. We have a very, very robust cultural program. We did have a cultural worker, but what we've done now is we've switched over to have a cultural coordinator so that we can start inviting all of the knowledge keepers, all of the elders, so that each and every one, and I will say this as an Indigenous person that just started my path 15 years ago, there's a certain comfort level in knowing that you have options, right? So celebrating through culture, we do belt making with nipi, we do beading, ribbon skirts, ribbon shirts, any kind of we invite anybody that comes in, if they have a skill, come back for 5 weeks and teach us how to do something. Summer day camp, we do close all of our programs for the entire summer so that we can host all the children in our neighborhood. We're a small center, so we generally have maximum 10 participants that we are funded for. But as each and every one of you know, that usually means 12 to 15. And we just, eat more bannock. So, which pictures do we have? Which one am I on? Oh.
That's the next one.
This is the next one down?
Yeah.
So men's programming, I don't know if you recognize this gentleman right here. Which is one of my favorite pictures. We do get signed releases from all our participants because we love pictures. We have thousands. So, for example, this is Fedja and Louie. Louie is one of our male participants, again, that was impacted by domestic violence, intimate partner violence. He's been with us for a very, very long time. Fedja, in fact, is very, very scared that he may be with us for the rest of his life. But just a bird's eye view into, that's kind of our day-to-day stuff. The volunteers are always at our center, every single day. So our men's circle, again, I'm going to just let Ty talk a little bit about the men's circle. But I'll flip over to the Warriors Volunteer Group because that was our new initiative. So the Warriors Volunteer Group is our group of 6 men and any men from the community at any stage and space in their life. And I will tell you a story how we got the first volunteers. There were a couple of guys fighting across the street. They had their king cans out. There's maybe 3 or 4 of them. And they were just kind of squabbling. And we had some trucks coming, and I thought, wow, we had kids up here, but they, nice guys. So I walked over, and they were just so respectful. They hid their king cans, but I said, hey, I'm not asking you to put down your king can, but what I am asking you to do is don't use your hands, use your words. But if you do want to put away your king can tomorrow morning, come on down and I got some work for you. One showed up the next day. He showed up every day since. And 2 more started showing up. And so I did the statistics. We have now had 5 volunteers that have come through our doors for service. And they are working full time for us. 5. Did I count that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we also have another 4 volunteers that are on track to become employed. So there's really beauty in it. And I think when we talk about an organization like Wabang that is situated in that particular area, we got a text yesterday, we have group chat, and one of the girls immediately sends to the group chat, hey, everybody don't go outside, some dude got stabbed. That's our everyday reality. So it's about taking care of one another. It's about these men being able to run over and say, okay, ladies, you're not going here or there. I'm going to point at Patty. She is a smoker, bad habit. She is not allowed out of our center without one of our male participants. But that's the family, and that's the beauty in family, right? Is that they will not let her walk out that back door unless you got Big Ty or one of our volunteers, right? So they're okay with me, though, because I look like I belong there. But. So the Warriors Volunteer Group, again, that was really designed, again, about building capacity for the community around us, inviting these women, these men into our center, again, feeding them, inviting them to program, just come in and sit and have a coffee. We do snack bags every day. When I got there, we had 25 snack bags. We had funding for 25 snack bags. I don't know if we have any government, but I do have to tell this quick story. I came from a space in government where my budget for a luncheon for 36 nations was $30,000. For a lunch, one lunch. That's our budget for 4 months of snack for an entire community. I was so humbled coming down and just looking at what we didn't have and what they were providing and how they were working with nothing. So part of our goal now is to look at sustainable funding, to look at those 4-year agreements, to ask our funders to really, we want to reclaim our space in the community, right? The first presenter, it's very familiar to us because we started out as domestic violence, family violence. But with the evolution of what's happening in the community, I would honestly say food security is probably our biggest issue right now. And I say that because, again, $30,000 for 3 months of snacks versus one luncheon. The other piece is coming from child welfare. I have been extremely humbled at opening that door to see the young people that I provided service to. It's hopefully a second chance for me, right? But they're showing up, right? But it speaks to these systems and the colonized systems and how, again, somebody was speaking about how do you dismantle a system. No easy way, but I will tell you that this crew here is dismantling every system as fast as they can. Work readiness program, again, that falls into the Warriors Volunteer Group. These guys do a really great job with doing one-on-ones with these guys, getting them to EIA, having those really difficult discussions about, should I say it, right? Not worrying about the woman, that just knock the shit out of you, but worrying about how you're going to get to work the next day and how you're going to go back to that relationship and make it healthier, or how you're going to choose. Right? But I am going to give it back to Ty, because I'd like him to talk a little bit about Men's Circle, and Damon, who is our worker. I don't think he's in there. I'm trying to see our pictures there. Okay, there's Autumn. So yes, there is Men Supporting Men, and up there, what's Autumn doing? That's outreach. So Fedja will tell you a little bit about Rowdy Hampers and his good score on Rowdy Hampers.
First,
You got 3 minutes.
first and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge and say thank you to Daniela here from Willow's Place. She does intakes for our men and sends them our way. A men's circle started off as just a small group of about 6 or 7 guys on Thursday evenings, and a month or two went by, word got out, the group filled up. Damon, our cultural guy, everybody loves him. When he talks, everyone's quiet, everyone listens, and he teaches well. Now, I have it running 2 times a week. Tuesday afternoons for people who don't have nothing to do in the afternoons, and then Thursday evenings. That was a request of a lot of people who were not even just experiencing domestic violence, just to have somewhere to go, just to have a group of people they can relate to. And yeah, there's that, and that's Men's Circle. Hopefully to have a building in the future dedicated for that. Thank you.
All right, Rowdy Hampers for you. And can you please explain how they named it themselves, Rowdy Hampers?
Long story short, I worked in a homeless shelter in Winnipeg for 10 plus years. After I left it, it was really hard for me to adjust, not dealing with the community every single day that didn't have basically anywhere else to go. When I started at Wabong, it was a large change, but it was an opportunity to reach out to the homeless population in maybe even more meaningful way. What do we do? There's about 50 people, families that live basically under the bridges by the riversides. We make sure that we cooked homemade meals. We make sure that, and that's done weekly, we go for outreach. It's the best way to train staff. When new staff start, showing the humility and sharing the meal with somebody who sometimes hasn't eaten in days is important to me. And I think it became very important to everyone that works for us. Housing basically in the beginning was just simply housing, filling up paperwork. Pretty soon, we needed to do significantly more. We needed to, deal with landlords. We needed to obtain documents for people who were missing it. We needed to navigate the system and help with the EIA. We needed to, provide adequate clothing, and you name it. List goes on and on. For many years, we've been making friends out in the community, feeding people. We do Thanksgiving dinners. We provide Christmas hampers that we deliver with, sometimes our friends and coworkers and partners, and you name it, do the best that we can to reach as many people as we possibly can. Also, we're in a process. I was sick and tired years ago trying to find some sort of solution for adequate housing. Idea came about, and we're lucky. We're in the process of building a 26-unit building that's going to come.
We'll have space. We can have like 18 people now.
Yeah. Can't wait to be landlord to, as we call our friends rowdies. So that's going to be a brand new challenge, because it does with so many unhappy landlords and RTB and you name it. So now I get to do it. It'll be fun. But most importantly, it's the core area that we're in, where, a safe place for people who, don't have it. We're a family member when you need one. We're a meal when, you're missing one. We're a phone call away from a ride or a hospital visit or whatever it is. It's hard, grueling work, but it's also beautiful work. Like, it's something that, years later you run into somebody and, they remember you like, sometimes your own brother forgets what you did last week. So it's a very humbling feeling, and, hopefully we get to grow and we get to provide more stability and, do things right. So thank you everyone for coming out.
All right, I'll finish our last slide, which is mostly pictures, and I'm a really, really visual person. And we also did this presentation yesterday because I forgot something. Anyway, so when we talk about the work, food security, again, is one of our priorities this year for our strategic plan. And the reason I say that is while we are domestic violence, we're working towards making sure there's healing. One of the things I'm noticing, and I have to say it, is the cost of food and food security. I can invite everybody in my community to come and sit in men's circle or to come and sit with my traditional women. But when people are hungry, it's really difficult to try and even get out of bed to do that. We talk about the different systems navigation. I had a question once, a long time ago, about, do you guys think you're social workers? No, absolutely. We don't want to be social workers. I tried that once. Didn't go well. But we behave and we act like social workers. We do. We're navigating systems. They've got to know child welfare legislation for the folks, the men that have their children apprehended. They have to know EIA. They have to know the justice system. And the other piece, when Fed just said, we're a warm cup of coffee or a handshake, we have lost, and we need to acknowledge, we have lost just in the last 6 months, 3 participants, and 5 young girls that I worked with through overdose. So when we're looking at the challenges of what's going on in our community and trying to find actionable ways to move along, for us, it's about engaging them to come in. You're never going to get anywhere unless you build that trust. So that actionable item is making sure that, you're just asking for check-ins. And I'm going to use one story of one of Ty's young girls who visited 2 sites continuously, ours and another one, and we couldn't find her. So we couldn't find her because she had passed away. Another one of our young women who we just lost to MMIWG, we called missing persons. So again, the work that we're doing is so key and instrumental in building any capacity, because at least somebody has a lifeline, even if it's just one person or somewhere to go. So those are our snack bags. No, that's rowdy hampers. And again, language is really important, and I know people can get really offended sometimes by the language we use. So we call them rowdy hampers because they're rowdies. We didn't make that up. We asked them to come up with their own name so that we could do a grant fund for enough food to feed them via those Friday snacks. So yeah, we've gotten some flack on that, but I'm like, you know what? They get to choose. They're in charge. So daily snack bags, we did start with 25. We're going to be way over budget. I think we're averaging 150 a day. Feeding the soul, we were supposed to feed 50. I think we feed 58 now. Weekly food hampers, we had 25, and now we do 45. We haven't received any additional funding for that. However, I'll figure it out. Rowdy hampers, we did get funding for that. So every Friday, these guys get to go out and visit the encampments. And I just wanted to show you our team. There's Fedge again, he's in every picture. So this is Neepi. Neepi is our cultural worker. She comes in and does work every Tuesday with the women. That is Brianna, she is our receptionist. There is actually my granddaughter sorting bus tickets. And that was a celebration we went at. So I just wanted to show you all of our staff. And there again is Fedja, Brandy, Imogen. So what I do want to just leave you with, if nothing else, is again, because when I was trying to figure out what what we were going to talk about. It was the actionable items. So what I will say is those actionable items are dream big. That's what we do, right? Having to create better relationships with funders, 16 funders, right? So just being able to do what you mean, say what you mean, and do what you say. But I would like to thank you and thank these guys for all of their hard work every single day. Patty for always having my computer up. Any questions? No, we're good?
The 24 facility, is are getting together, is it that COLA or is it
That's going to be women. She'd asked about the 26 unit apartment. It's not one of our hidden shelters. If you're familiar with Winnipeg, it's located at 191 Watt. It is a brand new build and we've got a little bit of kinks in it. And I always acknowledge when people do not so nice things. The city of Winnipeg gifted us that piece of property for $1 in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. And we just had the quote for soil remediation and we've paid it. It cost us just about $800,000 that we don't have to clean the soil. So we're still in talks with them because the way I see it, under the guise of reconciliation, it was like giving us a smallpox blanket. Like you gave us dirty land. And we have gardens that we wanted to put in there, so we can't even have medicine gardens because they're not going to dig. We're going to be up so those are the realities. And I always, we're getting a 26 week, we're going to house 26 beautiful families. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.